G'day everybody, it's Dave from Wing Chun Mind Force. Today I'm going to start a new series about the Bart Jarm Do, the mysterious butterfly knives. These are one of the two weapons we have in Wing Chun, and some legends say these are the only traditional Wing Chun weapon, and that the pole was brought in as an exchange with another martial artist long time ago. I'm not absolutely convinced of that, but I'll talk about that when we get in our pole series. But today I'd like to talk about the Bart Jarm Do. Before I throw that down, it's a nice sheath that comes with them, and there's usually the way they're made, they're sort of flattish on one side and rounded on the other. See how they're sort of rounded and then more flat on the inside there. You'll find all different varieties of these. These are fairly standard looking ones. These cost about, I think it was close to $300 when I bought them years ago. The Bart Jarm Do words in Chinese mean 8 chopping knives. Bart Jarm is the 8 cutting or 8 chopping. Do is the word for sword or knife. Essentially they're like cutlasses, and my theory about them is that they were a boat-borne weapon, something that you could use fighting on a ship where there's lots of rigging, or if you're below decks, fighting where there's pretty low overhead and long swords, long weapons get stuck even indoors. These would be good for fighting in a crowded Chinese restaurant in a Jackie Chan movie. They're called butterfly knives because they look like a butterfly when you cross them that way. But the name of the form is 8 chopping, and it refers to a particular part of the form which I'll get to in the next video. This is really an introduction to the Bart Jarm Do today. It goes without saying because I've already said it, but you shouldn't be practicing these until you have a thorough understanding and indeed quite a mastery of the first 3 forms, the Sil Nim Dao form, the Chum Kyu form and the Bil Ji form. Should have done a lot of the other elements of Wing Chun, single and double Chi Sao, worked on the dummy, done a lot of practice on the dummy. So it sounds like it's a far off thing, doesn't it? But the reason I say hang back is just so that you won't develop bad habits doing something that you don't really understand. But having said all that, you might be able to use these fairly early if you can do what really counts, which is Sil Nim Dao, and specifically Yi Sik, the method of using intent or putting your mind into points. So Sigong Chu used the word Yi Sik often, at least in his videos. I haven't actually trained under him personally, but in his videos he talks about Yi Sik a lot, and it's translated into English sometimes as subconscious mind, sometimes as mind force. But what he's talking about is this ability we want to gather through our training, that we can feel our whole body as a unified thing, and we have a mind map of the body, and we can take our mind to any point in our body at any time and generate force by putting intent into that point or points, or even a whole thing. That's the Yi Sik, the Yi method that Sigong talked about, was being able to virtualize your body, have this mind map so you're feeling your whole body at all times, and you're moving it effortlessly as a sort of a one unit, and you're able to put your mind into your fingertips, in the palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, or maybe other parts of your body as you need it. It's sort of a creative thing. When we come to the knives, the first weapons form, we apply what we learnt in the dummy, which is where we start to practice putting our minds into things that we are not. So in the dummy, I suppose you could say that we do that in Chi Sao too. In Chi Sao, we do practice putting our mind into the other person and playing around with how that works. But in the dummy's the training partner where we learn to really put our mind into the arms of the dummy, into points there where we contact it, putting our mind into the centre of the dummy, whether it's the centre line or the tiny little centre, and mentally feel that we're affecting that. That's where this idea that can seem obscure to somebody who doesn't understand or can't feel this, but through our training we get to, it's just sort of normal to be able to put your mind into things and hold it there. So when we come to the Bart Jarm Do, we put our mind in the blades. Essentially, all weapons like this must become part of you, and the way we teach it is you put your mind, at least initially, past the point of balance, and keep it there, so that as you're moving, you feel like you're touching those points. It's, as I say in other videos about, like an artist has the mind in the brushes or in your fingertips. It's this ability to hold your mind in points. So in the Bart Jarm Do, we put our mind into a point. You could also feel the blade in your mind, like you can feel your arms. Essentially, the weapons become an extension of your arms. Which brings me to the next point. These are modelled on your forearms, which is very interesting. Make sure that doesn't fall off. So when you get your Bart Jarm Do, if you try them out like this is sort of a general size, but you can see it's pretty much the length of my forearm to the tips of my fingers. And that's a practical thing, because when we're using the Bart Jarm Do in the form, we're sort of coming within our own arms in different parts, and you don't want these to be too long or they're going to cut your arms. The other thing about them is that I think they mimic the hand. See how my hand, my thumb's like that? This is a David Lovegrove idea. I've never heard anybody else say this, but as an artist I look at this and it looks like the bottom of the palm, see how it's curved, and the thumb. And I think that's a very Chinese artistic thing. Now, I haven't been able to confirm this with any of the Chinese masters, but it seems to me, at least this type of Bart Jarm Do, it surely is a thumb. Like that just looks like a thumb to me. Obviously it has a practical application. It's sort of for catching a sword, maybe breaking a sword. I think there's a lot lost in knowledge about these things. It's what happens with arts. Centuries go past, people die with the secrets, don't pass them on. It doesn't matter, we can sort of work it out for ourselves. But I think that's, in my mind, I think of this as my steel arm, and it's an extension of me. So it's not just a separate thing. You want the weapons to become you. And in a very real way, that's how it is. They become you. Now, to go into the very, very first things we do, we just hold you just stand and hold the swords. So sideways. Just hold them like that, and you do everything else you do in your Wing Chun. So, you know, you stand very, very straight. Your body has that feeling of stillness. You're aware of everything. You're aware of your center. You relax. The swords are weighty. You just let that flow back into your center by relaxing your joints, relaxing your center. And the big key is relaxing your hands. Now, one of my theories is I think the dummy, the swords and the pole are meditation devices. They're ways of training this mind-body connection. Obviously they're practical things, you know, the dummies for practicing fighting, the swords are for chopping people into bits, bad guys, robbers, bandits, the poles for whacking people really hard and poking them. But for us, developing as Kung Fu people, as Wing Chun people, they're meditation devices. So the key thing is to empty your hand. You know, I talk about having a ball of energy in the hand and your mind in the fingertips. Everything previously still applies even more, which is where you really need to have all those things together. So an empty, soft, energy-filled hand filled with Qi. Qi is essentially consciousness. You want to release your subconscious, but your conscious mind has to sort of just relax and find a way to sort of step back and let the subconscious take over. Your wrist is empty. That soft emptiness of the wrist is what makes it powerful, by not turning from the wrist but turning from out here, this sort of ball of energy, and keeping your wrist empty and not tensing it. But when you clasp the sword's handle, you want to hold it really softly, like you're holding a little bird or a lizard or some sort of little creature. Just gently and softly. You don't want to crush it. You just hold it so it can't get away, but you don't squeeze it. And it's a real temptation with these to squeeze hard to try and make them sturdy. But as always in Wing Chun, the opposite is usually true. The softer and the more effortless, the stronger the grip. So just remember that. And so we're already practicing the Bart Jarm Do, just holding them, practicing relaxing your hands. I can feel my hands relaxing as I'm standing here, and I'm sort of becoming one with the sword. So mentally I'm upgrading that mind map that I've made of my whole body to include these two things now. So I can sort of feel them in 3D in my mind, in that place where at the back of the head where we say the Nim Dao is, I'm sort of feeling it there. And I'm getting used to the feeling of these. And for me, I sometimes just walk around holding the Bart Jarm Do in my hands, because if you're going to be good at any art, especially using a tool, it needs to be very familiar to you, a friend, not something that you pick up in the moment of crisis and it's an alien thing to you. You want to really know these. You want the feeling of them, want to be like your hand fitting in a glove. There's just one thing about these. These are beautifully made, but talking to one of the senior Chinese practitioners, I discovered that Qigong said that the point of balance should be here at the hilt. That's like, this is called the hilt, this bit here. This is the handle. There's a metal piece that goes right through called a tang. It's another thing I don't particularly like about these ones, is the tang doesn't go right through, it sort of stops there. And a friend of mine dropped these one time and busted them, not meaning to, but I've got to get a swordsmith to fix them, because that's a weakness. I much prefer something that's solid. But the point of balance should be there. So when I try to find the point of balance here, it's not there. It's somewhere about there. So that's probably a bit far along. And what I'm thinking of doing, I've got a friend who's a great metalworker. I'm thinking of getting these shaved down a bit and removing some of the meat from up here, and just bringing that back there, because you want to feel that most of the mass is right there, which makes total sense to me. You know, the feeling that it's just a big steel fist, and this cutting surface it does its thing without you really thinking about it. Anyone who's into Japanese sword, the legends of Japanese sword, knows that to use a Japanese katana properly, it's exactly like I've just been saying. You hold it very lightly and you let it do the cut. You don't smack it like a kid cutting weeds, and some people do that with Japanese swords. They get out and start, especially the cheap ones, cutting down long grass and weeds, which is a terrible thing to do. But you let it do the cutting, which brings me to another point. I was originally told that these are supposed to be blunt, and that when you strike they break bones, they don't cut. And I doubted that from the start. I'm a bit of a doubting Thomas. And I ended up asking a very, very senior Chinese practitioner, are these supposed to be sharp? And he said, yes, of course they are. He said the blunt ones are for practice, which makes sense. We keep them blunt so we, I'm not doing this and giving myself a deep injury. You practice with a blunt one, and all sword arts that I've ever seen, the new guys always get the blunt ones. Japanese sword drawing art, Iado, they don't let you near a sharp one till your fifth dan. So it's years down the track, which is really sensible, because those things are just like 3-foot razors. And these are the same. You've had a really sharp one, it'd be a very dangerous thing to learn with. But this very senior Chinese practitioner said to me, the blunt ones are for training with. You keep the sharp ones under your bed in case the bandits come, or the robbers. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it makes sense. And if you look these up online, you'll see, especially if you look at real old ones, sometimes they're quite sharp. They don't have this big shape. Sometimes they're really like a big dagger. So I think traditionally they weren't necessarily like this. They're just a short cutlass-like sword. And like so much of Wing Chun, it's a double-handed art, so everything's happening double-handed, both sides of the body. And my whole thing about the plastic balls in your hands, keeping your mind in your hands, you really feel your whole body when you're holding these, because your mind's taken up with the two hands. So exciting stuff. I'll leave it there. I'll just show you another interesting thing before I go. These are a wooden Bart Jarm Do that my friend Dave Summers, who has Zong Mao Wing Chun up in Brisbane in Australia, he and some of his guys made these for a conference, because we wanted to do Bart Jarm Do, but we didn't have a whole heap of them. And there's something about these. I really like practicing with these. Can't exactly explain it. Something about the woodiness of them, but I get the same feeling with these as I do with those. And these, I guess, balance is similar to those. but you could easily, you know, weight this up to make it more there. And I don't think I haven't seen wooden Bart Jarm Do before, but I think it's a brilliant idea. And if you want to make some Bart Jarm Do and you haven't got $300 to spend right away, make some wooden ones. In the end, you know, just the two sticks, like Bruce Lee fighting in Enter the Dragon that he has, you know, we've always thought they're a sort of a full Filipino eskrima type weapon, but when I watch Bruce, I think he's thinking about the Bart Jarm Do, at least to some extent. So the important thing is you've got something in your hand and you're able to get your mind into it, and the way we move our mass so that all of our mass is expressed in the point of these swords. That's, as usual, the whole point. We want to express all of our mass in our hand, in our forearm, in our shin, in our foot, bottom of the foot, whatever we're doing in Wing Chun, we want all of our mass expressed right at the contact point. So that's what we're doing with these. So I'll leave it at that. Ask your questions, comments below. Next episode I'll run through the Bart Jarm Do form and I'll talk you through the ideas that we use in performing the form. Okay, see you later.